Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We continue on with our derivation. So we've done a lot of things. We've derived all of physics up into the point where the proton is the inverse of the electron. And so we have things. Those things have two-dimensional components. That is the verbiage you will see in my paper. Numbers having to pair to uniquely to physical systems. Right, so we have these internalized properties, charge and spin. And charge stabilized spinning around each other gives us mass. And so all of the things around us are made of mass. And so we're at this point in our derivation where we can address directly a very massive chunk of physical history. What is gravity? And so, again, no physicist really right now today, like, they understand the history kind of, but again, you're describing the world around you. Some human being, some scientist comes along and says, here's some here's some realization that I've had, here's some understanding I have, and here's the conceptualization, and then here's the equations that represent that. And so the concept of what is gravity has never really been understood. And so we've derived a ton from this physical inversion. The electron and the protons are inverses. Energy and entropy are inverses. Infinitesimality and infinity are inverses. That's a little more conceptual, mathematical one, but it is true. Pairing to the rate at which information can be transferred. The speed of light is the fastest something can be transferred, and the inverse is the slowest something can move. And so information transfer meaning movement. And so those are our, our big fundamental inverses. And so historically, and again, fundamentally physically, what is gravity, right? Force, Newton literally said, and then Leibniz put an equation to it. For a reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Gravity is a force. And so really what we've proven, again, was with this fundamental stability of two, right? Pressure is first force per unit area. And when two objects are bumping into one another, right, their cross sections, right, or Compton's scattering angle, how much momentum is transferred during a collision. And so if my eyes look funny, there's a little automatic light that on this camera that goes on and off sometimes. And so some of them, my eyes look red, and when it's blaring in my eyes, and it just turned off. So I don't know how it's going to look, but hopefully we're still rolling. Yeah, it looks like we're still on. But anyway, and so, right, Newton, Leibniz, that era, right, classical mechanics, this big idea, right, what is a force, right, and it's equal and opposite, but all force is contained, all force per unit surface area is pressure. And so we have demonstrated this irreducibility, where if you take force, it has application just like light does, but light is radiation, and that's why you have the gravitational wave, the speed of light, and it's the same propagation, right, it's a radiation limit. And so for gravity, we have this concept where we have mass, and then we have, force, but we've differentiated strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, electricity and magnetism. We've said Maxwell has unified that, and then gravity. And this big outlier is, right, gravity is so-called the weakest force, but it's also the force that's only pulling, right? And so what can we say about that conceptually? Again, linguistically, right, gravity, this VIT, and based on it, but gravity, right, is resistance to movement, right? Newton says it's a force. The whole concept of force being like the theme of physics. Again, there's no theory of everything. There's just a lot. You just derive everything, and that's what we've already done that. But point being, historically, is gravity is a force, and then Einstein's big intuitive thing, the speed of light is constant in all reference frames, and then the theory of general relativity, that gravity is effectively shape, geometry, right, the geodesic over a metric. But the reality is, conceptually, gravity is, and linguistically pairs to, viscosity, right? Viscosity is the resistance to flow. Flow being a word for movement. And so anything that resists movements is viscous, right? And gravity literally resists movement. So the natural definition of what is gravity is viscosity. So that's another huge, massive connection. I actually had written that over email 2 days ago. And so in the derivation yesterday, I didn't even bring it up. something I would definitely label the fundamental theorem of physics. Didn't even like recross my mind at that time when I was doing the video yesterday to say it. But the big, again, I wouldn't say there's one single biggest question in physics, but historically, right, we have this linguistical element, gravity, right, that this force, at first it's this force caused by mass, then it's a shape caused by mass, but conceptually it's the resistance to movement. And that should line up exactly with your intuition right now, right? It's slower than molasses in January, right? There's some sort of resistance to flow, flow being the word for a word for movement, in gravity resisting movement. That's what it does. So gravity is viscosity. Another big kind of connection, keep saying stabilizing, and then these phase changes, like when the universe has its, and all these things are inferred, right? We have one center. We've gone through the phase changes enough to where I don't like to try to rederive it, because I can't say it any better than I have in the previous episodes. And so we have this highly ordered state of minimum entropy. And now all movement, right, you have no completely efficient physical process, so all movement creates entropy, creates disorder. And we have this Big Bang, which again is a stabilization of these internal properties, these phase changes of the universe. But at the beginning of our measurement period, we'll call it, we have this highly ordered place of entropy. And so logically and physically equivalently, minimum entropy is maximum stability. And so that is completely consistent physically and logically. To say again, the right verbiage is stabilization events, right? Minimum entropy is maximum stability. You limit disorder, you have maximum order. Order stabilizes. Stability is the inverse of disorder. And so how about what is rotation to inversion? I put that on the screen yesterday. Again, when I'm editing and watching my own videos, because I really don't like to call them lectures, not for like some sort of like, we're all in this together, you absolutely cannot do what I do analytically, but learning is an individual process. And so, but rotation and inversion, again, it's like how many unique ways is there to actually modify the physical orientation of an object? Asking the question to generate the intuition. Harmony is balance. Dynamic is harmonic, right? When you say nature, we all live in harmony. You can picture the deer drinking water by the brook of water, it's bubbling by, and then the birds enjoying the sun, right? Nature's all in harmony. Harmony is balance, dynamic is harmonic. Sensoriality is harmonicality. Merchandise is a commodity. Apparel is merchandise. What is clothing? Thing, clothing. Sensuality loathes. Loathing hates. Closing completes. What is reversion to inversion? Right? If you revert back to something, it's kind of more of this horizontal inversion, vertical, revert, horizontal. But in reality, we have this inversion to differentiation to opposition to stabilization to reinversion or something. Again, how do we've covered that as much as I can. Inversion is vertical, reversion is horizontal. To revert is to go backwards. Is advice a service? Yes, says consulting. Consulting is the service of advice. Advice, advise. Again, playing on connecting the logic of service and advice, both having vice as a base or a compound word for, again, service. Again, I don't know if that's a Spanish ser or not, but you see what I'm saying. Intrality inverts. Okay, so now we're talking about this inversion. Inverse is serve, literally. When we have this differentiation that's clear logically, intra, meaning within a system, inter, between two systems, right? Opposition is inter, inversion is intra. And so intrality inverts. Intra, within. Sensuality is intrality. The opposite of intrality is extrality. And we see that with introvert and extrovert. And we also have the phrase, you're so extra. And I do want to point out I have it spelled intra with an I-N-T-R-A and an E-X-T-R-A, not an O. And again, clearly, again, back to geometric linguistics where it's just clear you're doing some sort of iteration. Yeah. But introvert and extrovert spelled with an O, but it's like the general form of that dichotomy. Sensorality is experientiality. Sensorality experiences. Sensation experiences. Sensate experientiate. Viscerality eviscerates. And that's a logical or a natural definition. Right, to eviscerate, to shred into finely thin slices. But just, again, that word, many people use it properly, and then it's like, well, what are they really saying, and what is visceral? I had a visceral reaction. That's the way I typically use it. But it's like, you know, you're in a room of people, and somebody's doing something overtly wrong, and you're just like, you know, you start sweating, or your heart rate's like, that's visceral, like a palpable reaction is viscerality. We've connected all the logic. I mean, that's, again, laying the groundwork stuff. Now we're contracting, right? All of this whole process, you know, part 288, we're contracting this logic to get this stabilizing syllability. Sensorality evaluates. Evaluation is assessment. Sensorality assesses. Sensorality is assessality. Sessality is essentiality. You can kind of hear that sound lining up. Resuscitation is essential. And so that is what I wanted to cover today with our derivation, the biggest one being the 100%. Again, I don't know if I want to call this, because it's a natural iteration, right? This VIT, gravity is viscosity. Certainly the current fundamental theory of physics. And again, you can it all changes with these other proofs. So all of these differentiations resolve with the final stabilizing thing, and we're just showing this contraction. All of this proof comes from we push out our logical bounds, and then we start pulling back in all of these finalizing results. So all of the proofing, all of the videos with big green letters that are huge, massive results. You just produce all of this work, and then people just directly steal it. But gravity is viscosity. I mean, that's its natural, logical, physical definition. The resistance to movement is viscous, and gravity resists movement. Big facts. And so again, obviously, historically, what is gravity is this huge physical question, and we've directly answered it. And so, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.